Welcome back. Round 10 has wrapped up and we'll take you through it with a lens on some of the bigger moments and the styles being adopted as well. A look at what makes the good teams good and the not so good teams and why they're struggling. Mark Foreman is my name. I call the footy for 6PR Radio. Mark Stone is his name, former assistant at Brisbane, West Coast, Fremantle and Sydney. Stoney, welcome back for our round 10 review.
Thank you, Forsey. Great week of footy. A little bit of wet weather this week.
Yep.
Wet footy, but still a good round. Nonetheless.
Absolutely. Winter is on the way. And there's a bit of sickness getting around as well. We've both been struck down. But it's great as we hit these winter months of footy. This is where it can be a grind for some teams. And I think the important thing is just getting 4 points rather than the style occasionally.
Yeah, I had to actually laugh on the weather. When I saw Brad Scott's presser and one of the journos asked him about the crowd, it's the lowest crowd. Yes. And he said, when you got up this morning, did you feel like going for a walk in the park? And I actually got up and looked at the game when Fremantle was playing and looked at the weather and I thought, thank God we're in Perth.
Yeah.
It wasn't a very nice day over there in Melbourne. It's starting to turn, isn't it? We're going into winter.
Yeah, it really is. Actually, I don't mind wet weather footy. I love, and often you see some players get real silky and the class comes to the fore.
It does, yeah.
But we will go through these games. As always, Stoney, let's start with our round 10 numbers, some of the more wild ones that caught my eye. So going all the way back to Thursday night, can you believe this? Only 3 players have ever had 30 touches and 5 goals at the Gabba. I reckon you might be able to get one of them. Do you reckon? Do you reckon you can get one?
30 touches and 5 goals.
At the Gabba. So Brisbane player, all-time great.
Voss?
No, that's a good guess.
Ackermanis?
Yes, well done. Acker is one of them. Brad Hardy, Brownlow medalist, is another. Yeah, 2 players who have had 30 and 5, and now Sean Manor.
Has had 30 and 5.
He hit 30 and 5 on Thursday night.
I wonder how many Judd had the day he kicked 5 up there.
That's a great call. It must have been close.
In the 20s for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was in the first half. How many guys have kicked 5 in the first half?
But probably only one.
Chase down that stat. There you go.
The youngest, speaking of Brisbane Lions, the youngest players to kick 100 AFL VFL goals for Brisbane, it is now Logan Morris. So he kicked his 100th career goal on Thursday night, 21 years and 4 days. He beats Daniel Bradshaw, who's second on that list to that moment. He almost did it before he was 21 years old. So he turned 21 last week, Logan Morris. Isn't he a talent?
He is a talent, yeah, and a 2-time premiership player.
Oh, unbelievable. Just extraordinary, and really love watching him play. That was the first time on the weekend, so going to Friday night, that Sydney has conceded 5 goals in a row this season. So they conceded a string, and that was to open the game as well.
Yeah, they're normally the goal chain specialists themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. North Melbourne are now 0-20 at games played in South Australia. They cannot win at the Adelaide Oval. It's just extraordinary. 0-20 at South Australia as well.
That is remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, in the 18-team era, they are really struggling there, and we'll get to that, Stoney, because a 10-goal second quarter piled on the pain for North Melbourne. Melbourne. Now, I brought you this last week. I don't know if you remember this. I said Melbourne was the only team to concede the first goal of every single game this season.
Yes,
they kicked the first.
Oh, there you go.
They kicked the first goal, so it took them until round 10 to do that. We will touch on this one as well. Removing the COVID years, I don't think we can count them in these stats. That is Essendon's smallest crowd at the MCG since 1993. So that is well over 30 years.
And traditionally draw big crowds, don't they? Essendon, Collingwood, Carlton, Richmond usually have big crowds at the MCG. So yeah, that's alarming, but it's following the trend of their team a little bit.
It really is. 25,100 people turned out for that one. To also watch Pat Voss play his second game at the MCG, another 5-goal haul. He's played 2 games at the MCG. He's kicked 11 goals, 1, Pat Voss. So bags of 6 and now a bag of 5. Doesn't play there much, but he's one we'll chat about as well.
Well, that's important because if they end up there in a final, at least he's going to feel pretty confident walking into that stadium, but against the team that let him go too.
Yes, and that is certainly one that's in my notes to chat about. And the last one, I suppose I'm trying to find a bit of positivity for the Giants. This is their worst start to a season since Adam Kingsley's first year in charge, when they went 3-7. So they're currently 4-6 now after losing to the Eagles. But in 23, when they went 3-7, they then went and won 12 of the next 15, and they made it to a prelim, which they lost by a point. I suppose the caveat on that is that the list is a little older now, but there is hope for the Giants. Kind of. I tell you what, I look forward to going through that game because
things can change quickly in footy.
They can. They can.
And it needs to for them because their style is a bit hard to identify at the moment. And let's not take anything away from West Coast, and we'll talk about the game shortly. But usually you can look at a Giants game and you can say that's their style. That's how they play. It's fast. It's moving. They control the ball by hand and foot.
Yeah.
And they challenge it with scoring. They just didn't have any connection inside 50 really, and they didn't move the ball very well. So we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah, absolutely. They are the numbers that stood out from round 10, Stoney. And always, let's get into it. And we'll go through these in order. Back on Thursday night, seems like an age ago. I love Thursday night footy for what it's worth. Brisbane and Geelong, and the Cats went up there on a mission, and they got that mission done. They beat the Lions comfortably, which is no mean feat to do there at the Gabba. The takeaways for mine, O'Shane Mullen spent most of his time on Lachie Neale, who was kind of good enough to run it through, and he got a few touches as well. I think he ended on 28, but they weren't the most impactful. It was kind of a 0-0 draw. Sean Manor was just brilliant as he appeared in my stats there. He had 30 touches, 5 goals, was outstanding. And then the one I'll leave you with, Stoney, before you delve into this one, is that Geelong just shut down Brisbane's short kicking game. And I don't understand why any team would not do that. How did you see this one?
Well, I liked Mullen's game. You mentioned that. We talked about him not long ago on this podcast about how he runs so hard both ways, and he not only tries to shut down players, but he tries to get them the other way. And he got lucky a couple of times on transition spread, got forward on him, kicked a goal on him, and a number of times was bolting out of the stoppages. Now, sometimes that's coordinated. It might be that the winger who's sitting at the back of the stoppage, usually in his sweep position, they've already coordinated it, and it's a strategy where he takes Neale if it goes the other way to allow Mullen to get out the front and go. I'm not sure if that was the case, but sometimes you have those tactics going into games. But he did a fantastic job. Lockie, as you said, still got a bit of the ball, but didn't have a usual impact. Sean Manor, fantastic game. In the old days of cricket, they used to say, if Lilly doesn't get you, Thompson will. Geelong's a bit like that with their smalls. If Manor doesn't get you, Close will. If he doesn't get you, Myers will. And if he doesn't get you, Dempsey will.
And do you know who's having, and I don't actually have the numbers to back this up, I usually do, but the eye test to me, Jack Martin, he's providing just some spring. He's good above his head. He's good on the ground, and he seems to be having a really good season. Of course, in the absence of one of their small forwards, who, why am I going blank? I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
Yeah. What am I? Been absolutely brilliant. Used to play at Adelaide. Yes. My goodness. Anyway, I'll get that shortly. People are screaming at their podcasts right now, but Jack Martin has been outstanding.
Well, Jack's an elite talent. He's a high talented player. He just hasn't had a decent run at it in terms of consistency. He's been around a little bit, different clubs. But whenever he seems to get going and start to play some good footy, he drops.
Tyson Stengel.
Yeah,
Tyson Stengel.
He drops away again. Yeah. So hopefully for Geelong and Jack's sake, he can continue this trend because it tends to be a bit up and down with him. But, yeah, they were fantastic. And you mentioned that the uncontested marker, when it gets a bit greasy up there and the ball's on the ground more, that's where Brisbane seem to struggle a little bit. They've got very good ground level players, but if you take those uncontested marks away from them, it just sort of stifles their ability to keep the ball off you and also their penetration towards inside 50. And I thought Geelong made sure it was a bit of a scrap and made sure it was a ground ball game.
Yeah, and they did it really well. They missed Zorko as well, the Lions. You'd expect that he's back there next week. Friday night, we had another doubleheader, Stoney. So this one, and we will pick this apart because I do have something to raise with you against surrounding the Pies, but they were brilliant to start with, to be honest. Now, you've got me on board with the Pies. You have sort of broken apart what they do, how they defend, and I'm all aboard it, Stoney. It's very much a team defence. They are missing so many players and they keep having key outs. But those that come in step up.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a system thing.
Yeah.
And they're clearly really well drilled. I actually tipped them. I looked at my phone. I saw, you beat 5-0. I might get this one. No one else will. And then, of course, they, we always knew Sydney would come. But Nick Blakey straight after the game, one thing I heard him say was, yes, they clogged us up in the middle, and that is something that you've identified in the way Collingwood defend. They found a way through it. They eventually hold on to win Sydney. They came back at them, but credit to Collingwood who hung in there. Oscar Steen is now injured, and I believe that might be an ACL. Darcy Cameron was missing as well, so they've got a lot of makeshift problems and that they're trying to use to fix on the run, and they got within a kick of the team who everybody considers is the best.
Yeah, that's what you got to take your hat off to them with so many players missing. And I mean, I've been banging on about Collingwood's defence a lot, haven't I? And the way they defend the corridor is so good and so coordinated and systematic. And again, they did it again on Friday night. On Friday night, particularly early. But I also noticed watching the game that they were using the ball through boundary and wing. So remember a few weeks ago we were talking about the 3 zones that Champion Data have, which is corridor and then wing, which is just outside that, and then boundary, which is really wide. Well, Collingwood moved the ball boundary and wing in the first half all the time. They didn't go through the corridor themselves because they were setting up to defend the corridor and move the ball wide. So if you think about some of the goals they got early, with Dacos got one, he took a mark in the junction, kicked the goal. They kicked a lot of goals from wide. So I thought this is a deliberate plan to play wider and make it harder, if they happen to turn it over, make it harder for Sydney to go back through the middle because they weren't going through the middle themselves. And so that worked really well for them early. And it was Collingwood's highest ever pressure rating. The first half.
Wow, yeah, okay.
So they were doing exactly what they wanted to do, and their plan was working quite well. But then in the second quarter, the Swans had 10 of the last inside 50, so that started to break down. Blakey, as you mentioned, was very good. He had 19 disposals in the first half, and here's where you can see what happens at half time, where Dean Cox makes a few adjustments. And so in the first half, Collingwood had 27 chains out of their back 50, and 10 of those went inside 50. That's a pretty high ratio. You normally talk about 10% or maybe a bit more, maybe 20% at a max go end to end.
Okay.
So that's somewhere around 35%. In the third quarter, they had 17 chains out of their D50 and 1 went inside 50. And that happened because Swans had 12 forward half intercepts. So not only did the Swans stop their ball movement, but now they're getting it back in the front half. So therefore, they don't have to move the footy from the back half themselves through the corridor. They're already getting it back in the forward half. And as a result of that, the third quarter, they had 20 to 8 inside 50s. So the game was played in their front half, and it made it very hard for Collingwood to get through them and score at the other end. And eventually they just grinded them down. Credit to the Pies, though. They only hung in. They only just got beat. But as you mentioned, when Steen went down, Grundy just took over the game. I mean, he's had 46 hit-outs, 17 to advantage. He's had 19 first possessions himself.
He was a monster.
And 24 contested possessions for the game. So he was enormous. And Blakey had 39. Of those 39, 8 were kick-ins. So let's not count those. He's had 30, but 902 metres gained, which is like, the length of Flemington Street.
It's crazy.
And so, that, I think the Swans deserved their win. They had 71 inside 50s to 56. It was a high contested game, 160 to 145. And typical Swans fashion to finish it off, Rowbottom laid the important tackle to stifle Collingwood's movement and shut the game down. So really good game, though. And I take my hat off to Collingwood. They're playing a couple of numbers down, some key personnel injured, but they're a hard team to beat up there, Sydney, and they've got a few different ways of beating you.
Perfect segue to something I heard Nick Blakey say, and I'll raise this when we talk about the Dockers shortly. Immediately following his post-match. And I love those interviews because the players don't have time to think and orchestrate their answers. They're very honest. And he said, it's not easy to continue winning constantly. You have to find different ways. And he said, we're not always up. There was a game who they only just beat somebody, might have even been last week. They just got over North Melbourne. But they got it done. And let's just remember, we're in May. And they are sitting at the top of the ladder. They're just banking points. It's the same as Fremantle. And he said it's not always going to look pretty, but we're just finding ways to get it done. And I think there's absolutely something in that.
Well, there's the mental pressure of continuing to be at the top and continuing to win. But there's also in the AFL an enormous amount of work gets done on opposition analysis. And one day what we'll try and do is I'll try and get someone that I know that does oppo analysis around the competition, and we'll bring them in as a guest. But they're sitting there other teams are sitting there when they're playing Sydney. They're going, well, you have to stop them going through the corridor. You have to take Blakey's penetration away. You've got Papley, who's highly dangerous at ground level. If the ball's coming in long and you're putting extra guys in there to spoil it, bring it to ground, we've got to deal with Papley. You got Heaney, who's a match winner. I mean, one day when I was with Brisbane, we went to Sydney and we had a plan, Brisbane v Sydney, of doing different things. But one of our plans, amongst other things, was we went hard tag almost. It was, but it was like a Dunkley onto Heaney in the last quarter. Because if you look at Heaney's last quarter stats, they're through the roof. He just finds a way to lift himself, and sometimes he'll kick 2 or 3 in that last quarter. So, there's teams putting a lot of work into each other, and so that's part of what he's saying is each week there's teams coming in and they're doing different things to us to try and stop what we do, which is generally run it through the middle.
Yeah.
And so they've got to find other ways to defend and other ways to attack.
And I would like to think I'm learning off you, Stoney. It was the exact reason that I did tip Collingwood, because you speak to us about how they protect the corridor, and that is what Sydney does. So I sort of thought in my head, well, this is how Collingwood's going to defend. If it is successful, they may well win. They were just down a couple of troops. Now, I'm going to hit this issue now with you, okay? One of the troops was Scott Pendlebury. What I'm about to say, I don't often go and give, I don't often get grumpy, Stoney, but this one has...
you're grumpy? Oh, yeah?
This is really... it's just confused me a lot, this situation. So what I'm going to play to you here is Craig McRae's response. He was asked, you've rested Scott Pendlebury because you want to celebrate... Well, the question was he's going to celebrate his milestone next week at the MCG. He would have been helpful out there, would he not? Here's what he said. So I understand it. It is a heck of a record, okay? And to be honest, the more I think about this, it may well never be beaten just because of the way the game's played now. It's so dynamic. We're seeing a lot of injuries. To have that longevity is extraordinary. The reason this really confused me, and the reason this is hard for me, is because Craig McRae is probably my favourite coach in the league. He reminds me a lot of Ted Lasso. But the reason being, he is team first. He's a team first coach. You speak a lot about the team defence. We've talked about the team defence, but he's a team-first coach. He loves the fans, and he knows that football club, which is probably the most powerful in the league and the most well-followed, they demand excellence and they demand wins. Now, they have dropped a few points this year in really close games. They're a club which I believe is good enough to play finals. They need to be winning games. He has prioritised an individual and this celebration over the team. Now, there may be some, neither of us obviously know the inner workings of how Pendlebury's body is holding up, etc. And absolutely, of course, he's going to be rested this year. The guy's 100 years old, and it's extraordinary what he does to get up and play. But that response to me told me that we're prioritising an individual over the team and over our wins. Now, if I was a Collingwood fan, I like Collingwood, but I'm not a Collingwood member. I've got some very close friends. I live with one of them who are Collingwood members, and they're going, what? We just want to win. Yeah. Can you please do what we need to do to win? And the fanfare over this record-breaking game is now becoming very... It's a lot. It's almost a circus. He's going to wear 12 Guernseys. He's going to wear a golden number. He's getting to keep all this money. It's becoming very... monetized what is happening. This situation has confused me. There's a lot of emotional energy going into this game. And if you're West Coast, you are there to spoil that party. And honestly, I think a lot of the AFL world is actually probably rooting for West Coast, which is an odd thing to happen for them as well. That's how I feel about this situation. Yes, celebrate it, but this is almost going over the top. Where do you sit on it?
Well, it's a commercial game, isn't it?
It is now, yeah.
I'm on the fence a little bit, but if you push me one way or the other, I'll probably lean towards playing him against Sydney and trying to win. That's where my sort of heart and head goes. But I do understand how big Collingwood is. And so there's an argument to say, well, if he does it at Sydney, how many Collingwood supporters can go there and watch it live versus 100,000 of them potentially next week at the MCG? 100,000 loyal Collingwood supporters that have been following him for 20 years get to see him versus, what percentage of them at the SCG. So there's probably those arguments. We don't know if he saw or not. Let's assume he's not.
Yeah.
I don't know really where I sit with it. I suppose if you're in the four walls of Collingwood, you'll get a better picture of it. But again, I think my instincts is try and win the game, versus celebrating a milestone. But it's a big milestone, though.
It's huge. Yeah, and please do not, I don't want anyone to think that I'm downplaying that. And I don't actually believe it. I don't know the future, but I don't think it will ever happen again because of the way the game's played now. But all I can take is what I hear publicly. And he's saying, would you rather celebrate the SCG or the MCG? We're prioritising a celebration over winning a game of footy.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they'd beaten Sydney and they're on track to do that, for the first half and a bit, would this be a topic? That's probably the question. And it is a topic because they didn't beat Sydney.
And you know what? I just was looking out there, especially as a guy that tipped Collingwood and a guy that actually I love watching him play. I thought, Scott Pendlebury would be handy right now. The experience. They dropped 2 points, Stoney, against the Hawks. They conceded 7 points in the last 40 seconds. Just think, experienced head to be handy.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy had 100 possessions and 15 goals on Anzac Day. He's an extraordinary player. And if he's in their best 20, he's in their best 10. He's in their best 5. I find it interesting at the moment and a bizarre one, but we'll see.
Well, a little bit. Again, as I said, I'd probably lean towards trying to win the game, but I'm not sitting in Fly's or Collingwood shoes. All I will say, I reckon, is let's congratulate him. What an amazing career. We haven't got long enough to sing the plaudits he deserves. But next week will be a fantastic event, really. It's going to be an event, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it will be. And West Coast travels there. We'll get to that shortly.
I'd love to be them.
Yeah, me too.
Imagine being a young player at West Coast, drafted in your first or second year of playing, you're going to go out and play on that game.
90,000 on the MCG.
Brilliant experience.
Pretty handy. Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. Let's fly through a couple of these games, Stoney, because there's some footage in focus that we'll get to. Gold Coast make it a perfect 10 against Port. Well, not against Port, but in the Northern Territory. So they have never lost up in the NT 2 games a year since the start of 22. It's become a fortress.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're hard to beat in those conditions.
Yes.
It's slippery. They're good at that.
Yes, they love it.
Yeah, and they're trained for it. Being up there, Gold Coast is not much different to Brisbane. It can be really greasy in the morning because of the humidity and so forth. So, yep, good win by the Suns.
Yep. Adelaide and North Melbourne. This is obviously a developing team in North Melbourne. We sort of feel they've turned a corner. I kind of get the idea they're on a similar route to West Coast. I thought they were well ahead of where West Coast was, but to concede 10 goals in a quarter, to concede 13 goals in a row to Adelaide, it just suggested to me, and we know momentum is king in modern footy, but they couldn't stop it. So still a developing team. They've got all that high-end talent we've spoken about, but they were absolutely belted by the Crows, who, as I said, they're now, I think it's 16 in a row at Adelaide Oval, at 0-20 in South Australia in the AFL VFL era in the 18-team comp. Sorry, so they're struggling.
That's one of those games I reckon North come in for the review and just go, boys, we're wiping it. We need better effort. Let's get on with it. I mean, it's statistics. There's no point talking about the stats because they got smashed in everything.
Yes,
really, really poor day for them.
Can you? We will move straight on, but this is more of a general question about that. Why do those days happen? As a coach, like how could you predict that we're not going to show up today and do what we can?
I don't think you can. I think most times I've been involved in those sort of games is everything looks normal before the game and the preparation's been good, but for whatever reason, you just get overwhelmed and overrun, and it tends to happen when you're playing away. And you talk about Collingwood, the noise at the SCGs is an absolute advantage for the Swans, and it would have been the same for the Crows. Once they got that momentum and roll on and the noise they're making, it's very hard, I think, sometimes for young teams particularly to overcome that mentally and find they're on an island, find someone else that they can work with, even though they've got 17 teammates. That seems to be that they just go in insular and in shell, and that's the worst thing you can do. But you don't really see them coming, those sort of losses.
like you said, wipe it, move on, which we will do. Melbourne and Richmond. Now, I looked at the crowd figure, nearly 70,000 people went out and watched this one, Stoney.
There's no snow yet.
Yeah, good point. Those Deeds fans. For me, the takeaway was Tolstrup did a really... Sorry, I've said Melbourne and Richmond. I meant Melbourne and Hawthorn. For me, the takeaway was Tolstrup on Watson. Yeah. He did a really good job. Now, yes, if you look at the stats, Watson kicked 3 goals. He led the Hawks for that, but one was really late, and he was really well held. Colton Tolstrup is a really good young fella from WA. He has found himself a role as a shutdown player. Harris and Petty playing some really good footy. They're finding multiple roles for him. And as I said,
loved
nearly
it.
70,000 people.
I love that move of Petty forward.
You like it?
Yeah, it did. Yep. Yeah, freed him up a little bit mentally, I think, too. And he's obviously got a good skill set. He can mark it. He gets on the ground. He can snap goals. He looked a little bit like Josh Tracy down there, you know.
I heard Max Gawn say that about him. You know, he was asked about Harrison Petty, and he said, we have always rated him, and now we're finding multiple roles for him, and we're seeing what he can do. Yeah,
and I think on a big picture level, like I think they're going really well, Melbourne, but it was the run against the run. Like Hawthorn's known for its running players and their ability to cover the ground. It's MCG and Melbourne now can seriously run. We talked about Sharp.
Yes.
And Ed Langdon and a few of those guys and Windsor and some of their runners. They've also got the 2 Picketts that are quick. So they've got a really strong running team, and they've actually outrun a good running team in Hawthorn.
Can you tell me about Harry Sharp? I know you mentioned this story, but I'm keen to clip this up for people. You at Brisbane, you got to know him a little bit, but his running ability was extraordinary.
Yeah, when he went up there as a young draftee, he was still going to school. He was doing year 12 up there.
Wow.
And he had studies and all the rest of it. So they managed him extremely well, Brisbane. He played mostly VFL, and he had a few weeks here and there where he didn't play because he had to do his studies and he travelled home and all those things. But he ran a 3K time trial in something like 8:53. Now, this is going off my memory, which is fading a little bit these days. But, yeah, it was extraordinary time. I think I told you the story with it. I asked the question of who's the best runners? Yeah, it's McCluggage and Berry, and they would run sub 10. He came in and run 7.9.
So he's beaten those runners by nearly a minute.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. What is it about him that was allowed? Why was he allowed to leave Brisbane?
I'm not across that, really.
Yeah.
I think it might have been a bit about opportunity. Yeah. He wasn't getting a lot of games. Once he'd finished school as a fully fledged AFL player, I think he was playing a lot of VFL, didn't feel like he was getting opportunities. Jasper Fletcher came into the team, plays the same position. Yeah. Will Ashcroft came into the team. Some of the younger guys were getting opportunities. He wasn't. Yeah. Requested a trade back to Melbourne, where he's from, and it's been a good move for him.
And good on him as well. What was he like as a person?
Yeah,
when you got to know him?
Great kid. Yeah, I mean, He's quiet, but he's got an inner confidence that sort of shines through when you sort of watch his mannerisms, and even now when you see him celebrate goals, you can see he's got that in him.
Yeah.
And it's a credit to Melbourne. They're starting to bring that out of him and taking the lid off his jar and letting him jump.
Love that. The lid off the jar. Lid is off for Harry Sharp. Saturday night, Stoney, the standalone fixture. I'm going to let you talk about this one, but my only question to you is, what is it about a new coach coming in and so often getting a win?
Well, they tend to not say too much about how they want to play and what we need to do. Usually it's just, let's bring effort, boys, and have some fun out there.
Yeah.
It happens so often, doesn't it? You know, the shackles are off and players have that sense of freedom, just go and play. I loved his attitude, by the way. Josh Fraser, he said, I'm not going to really put my hand up for the job. I'm just going to do it for the next 14 or 15 weeks and enjoy it and do the best I can. And I thought, even if he does want it, that's the way to go, because he's not going to get hounded every week. You know, does this help your chances? Does that help your chances? Does this hinder your loss? Does this hinder your chances? I just thought he was so relaxed. And I was watching the TV and I felt relaxed.
That's cool.
And then I thought, well, his players will be, because that's how he is. They're going to be the same. And it was great to see them kick 5 in a row at the end and finish off a game.
And how important is that, by the way? Just hearing you say that, you were watching the TV, you relaxed. So his players, you know, they're going to be the stress that those Carlton Football Club players must have been under. We hear how much they loved Voss. Voss was under stress. Those players are going to be under stress. So for Josh Fraser to try and just take the stress away, that seems really important.
Yeah, and portray your demeanour is portrayed across the rest of the group if you're a head coach. And I thought he was good because he wasn't he wasn't over relaxed in the sense of, it's not like I don't care. And he wasn't overstimulated either. You know, like, well, here we go, boys, we're going to get out and have a crack. I just thought he had a really calm and measured and balanced approach to it, and that shone through in his team, and they just did what they had to do. And a little bit of an undermanned Dogs team, unfortunately. They really miss English, don't they?
Oh, how this season has flipped on its head after 3 weeks. We thought these guys are unbeatable, untouchable. Their scoring power is extraordinary. Their defence is extraordinary. And through injury and now confidence, that they look a shadow of what they were, the Dogs.
Yeah, they do. And I mean, every team's the same, really, aren't they? If you take the best players out of every team, they're going to struggle a bit. But to the credit of Carlton, though, they had 17-2 inside 50s in the last quarter and looked full of run, where it's been the opposite in previous weeks. So that'll do them the world of good. Just as a playing group, they'll come in, or today, if they're having their review today, they'll come in and I'll be chipper. Although, you know, I have heard around the traps that their mood through the week with Vossi wasn't poor, it wasn't low, it wasn't like they're all moping around with their heads on the ground. It was quite upbeat, but they weren't able to get it done on game day. So they'll come in this week looking forward to the next game.
Yeah, which is it makes me smile. I don't have much to do at all with Carlton, but I just think, you know, particularly having a fair bit to do with the Eagles over the last few years, how difficult it must be to walk in constantly losing. And I've heard Adam Simpson say a similar thing. You know, it's hard to get people up every Monday. So, yeah, really great to see after a win. Sunday's games. So there's a couple that we'll have a chat about, Stoney. First of all, Essendon and Fremantle. Now, we spoke about the poor crowd. I found it really bizarre that the Essendon fans started booing Pat Voss. Now, there were about 17 people there. But also, Essendon was the one that let him go. He wins the VFL Player of the Year. He wins the VFL goal kicking, never got a chance. Gets a chance at Fremantle. He's now in a top 2 team, genuine premiership contender, kicks 5 goals on the MCG once again. Great story.
Yeah, I'd take the booing, as difficult as it may sound, as a compliment.
Absolutely.
You know. Yeah. Well done to him. He's had some really good games. It was an interesting game. They did enough in the first half to put the game to bed, really. And interestingly, at halftime, clearances were 14 all, but Fremantle had scored 5-3 from their clearance, and Essendon scored 3 points. So it's a 30-point margin from stoppage alone. And they'd done enough, as I said, to put the game to bed. But I probably wouldn't be too happy about the last quarter and just the numbers there and how Essendon fought back. And I think it's human nature sometimes to just hold back a little bit when you know the game's over. But what I found really interesting, I saw David King break down some vision on Essendon. He does a great job. It was fantastic. He was spot on too, Kingy.
Yep.
But he was talking about how Fremantle had great inside-outside balance and Essendon had all their players just inside. And he goes, have a look at this. You know, there's all the Fremantle guys on the outside, and no wonder they're going to get burnt on, you know, on contests when they get it there. But what I thought when I watched it was you also have to give credit to the inside players at Fremantle, because I was watching all of those clips and they don't fumble. And I think that's a real credit to them. And that's why they're starting to become one of the hard teams to beat and hard teams to play against, because the guys on the inside, and all of those clips he showed, there was Jackson twice, Wachowski, Bolton, Sherry, Tracy, Brayshaw, Sarong, one touch.
Yeah.
And that's with a lot of opposition players in a near vicinity and around you coming in to pressure you. And that's how they can get it to the outside. And yes, when they get it to the outside, they burn you, they scorch you with their speed. But those guys on the inside are doing a great job because they're not fumbling. They're clean and they're tough, and they put their head over it and get it to the edge pretty quickly. And
credit to, I suppose, the depth. Now, they've had a very good run of continuity. Not too many changes due to injury. There's been only a few due to illness, which has happened a bit. We spoke here in the West about the illness going around. But they lose Pearce and they lose Young. Really bizarre one with Hayden Young at training as well, entering protocols. So I'm trying to figure out if he'll be back in time. They're Friday night. I don't think he will be for Friday night. I think they'll be without him again. But I didn't find myself saying, God, they could do with Alex Pearce or Hayden Young. Now, granted, Essendon, they're not at the correct end of the table, but those players that came in certainly, filled the void. And I thought that was brilliant. The last thing I wanted to say on Fremantle, Stoney, is, and I feel like I say this every week, but it was what Nick Blakey said, right? So we're in the month of May. Fremantle is top 2. Now, one of my very, very best mates is a fanatical painted on Docker. He has pessimism built into him due to the history of Fremantle. And he constantly says, we're not playing a full game. I'm sick of this. This is it. We always do this, not playing a full game. And I say, Cam, come on. It's okay. It is okay. I know you're not going. And they're not playing full games. They're playing halves at, sometimes at best. But they are 9-1. They've equaled the club record for wins in a row. They're just banking points. If maybe by round 20 they still haven't played a full game and they're not fully going, then yeah, okay. All right, well, let's see. Will this stack up in September? But Fremantle is winning games and they're putting themselves at the right end of the table in the month of May.
Yeah, well, they've been through this before. In the previous 2 to 3 years, they would go to Melbourne and have a brilliant big win against a Melbourne team, like go over there and beat Collingwood at the MCG, come back, get backslapped, fall into that and then lose the next week. And I think they've learned over the past 2 years just how to put that game in its place, review it, look at it, celebrate it if it's a great win, and then move on. And I think that's the maturity of them now that they seem to do that. I don't think they're playing halves, mate. I think they're playing more than halves.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is
halves is harsh, yep.
They're now got an ability to kick 5 or 6 in a row and pretty quickly, and that gives people the perception that they're just playing a half. They're playing pretty consistent footy throughout a whole game. They might have a couple of dips here and there, but every club does that. But they're able to score so quickly now.
Well, the Hawthorn game, perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're playing more than halves. I think they're playing pretty good footy, and I think they're able to put great wins to bed pretty quick and compartmentalise them and take out of them what they need to and then move on quickly to the next game.
That's a good insight. I really like that. And by the way, it's not a knock that I have them in top 2. I absolutely do. It's them and Sydney for me. This one will be a quick one because we'll finish on your vision with the Eagles and the Giants. St Kilda took on Richmond, and for me, the takeaway, this game went as expected. By the way, Richmond are looking at a couple more injuries. They may well need top-up players.
They might need you and me. They've got no listed players playing VFL.
Yeah, it got worse. I remember saying a couple of weeks ago they had 3. That's a shocker. The takeaway for me was what Cal Wilkie said after the game. He said, yep, Charlie Banfield is the most impressive kid I've ever seen come into the system, who made his debut, of course, the son of Drew Banfield. Yep. So West Coast missed out. He was allowed to go to St Kilda and he played quite nicely too.
And well done to him. Well done to the Banfields. Great man, Drew, and his family. And his brother's a damn good player too, Bailey, at Claremont. He's a little older and he might get an opportunity at some point down the track as a mature ager. I've got a bit of time for him as a player too. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But they were good, the Eagles.
Yep. So the last game of the round, to round out round 10, it was the Eagles and the Giants, Wallich Marawa, as they're known as during Sir Doug Nicholls' round. I called this one Stoney, so I was coming off a bit of a lurgy as well. The voice couldn't quite get up where it needed to be. But the main thing, and I'll always say this, people go to the footy for hope and enjoyment, whether you're a daughter going with her dad or you're going with your friends, you just want something to cheer about. And West Coast was in it at 3/4 time. Of course, they were, not only in it, they win the game, but being in a game has been few and far between, those opportunities for West Coast recently. And the fans were up and about. I asked Brady Hoff about it after the game. He said, yeah, we really could feel it. Yeah. They were the 19th man. They hold on. My takeaways from that were just, I love, Josh Dunkley's one of my favourite players in the game because of his willingness to just go, I'll do whatever you want me to do, Fags, and he's a darn good player to then win his own footy, but he plays a role. Yep. So it was Hoff and Murdoch that just did that. So Brady Hoff shut down Finn Callahan and Milan Murdoch, which I thought was brilliant coaching, by the way, to send him to Lachie Whitfield. Don't worry about, he's important for them, Milan. You go to him. Yep. And if ever there's a person that's just going to listen and run into the fire, it's Milan Murdoch. So I thought he was brilliant. Yep. Ruben Ginbey holding Aaron Cadman as well. There's a concern for GWS, but the positive here is West Coast.
Interesting you mentioned Dunkley, right? Because I was having a look at a few stats. He's AFL 1 for pressure acts.
Is he really?
On average, he averages 25.8 pressure acts per game.
Yeah.
And in this game, Dersma had 25, Kelly had 23, Reid had 23, Davis had 20 and Murdoch had 19. So they're right up there with the best in the competition for pressure acts in one game.
Yeah, of course. And that's why Josh Dunkley's so good, because he holds that average.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, the pressure for whatever reason was so high from both teams. It was one of those games where neither team took a lot of uncontested marks and controlled the ball. It was live play a lot, and there was a lot of pressure, a lot of tackles, a lot of hits, a lot of turnovers. In the first quarter, GWS had a pressure rating of 200. In the second quarter, the Eagles had a pressure rating of 200.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Interestingly, we talk about scoring from the D50. The score sources themselves, you centre forward from the percentage of intercept to score, centre forward is really high. It's above 50%. So if you get the ball off the opposition in your forward half, you'll score 1 in every 2.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even higher than that. This is just putting things in context. But if you get it from the D50, your scoring chain percentage is about 10 to 15%, as I mentioned. It's not that high. So it's a source that's hard to score from. However, the Giants are number 1 at scoring from D50 chains for the year, averaging 4 goals, which is quite good, 24 points. They didn't score in the first half from that source. And as a result, the Eagles had 9 forward half intercepts and 3 goals. That's purely in the second quarter. And part of that is Murdoch on Whitfield and just taking away some of their great ball users and rebounders from the back half. So really good move. But it was just the way they went about it.
Yeah, and on the ball movement, what I had found in my prep for that game was that West Coast is bottom 4 in the comp for D50 to forward 50, D50 to score, and D50 to what was the third one? I can't remember the third one. But ultimately, ability to move the ball, West Coast is bottom 4 in the comp, which I suppose you'd expect that. But to stop the Giants do that and what they do best, it's just a huge credit to McQualter.
Absolutely, yeah. Well done to Minnie and well coached. But you know what? To put that into perspective, though, it's nice if you can move the footy from one end to the other. It is, and it's part of your offensive change. It's important, but it's not how you win games. You win games by being able to get it back, not necessarily always centre forward, but before it gets into your D50. So if you can get more D mid or defensive mid and attacking mid turnovers, you'll score more often. And the game tells you that. It's not someone's made up sort of theory, and it's the stats in the game tells you. That's the feedback the game gives you. Get it back more often in your forward half, and you're more likely to score more off turnover.
What I love, Stoney, and I'm going to get you to get this vision up, this is the one that will pop up on the socials, is learning on the job. So West Coast, we know they're a very young team. In fact, they're the youngest team on average. They're the least experienced team on average. Yeah. Both of those categories rolled out this year. They are sitting at number 18. And I think the fans, they want a quick learning curve, because ultimately as a fan, you want to cheer a win. And they want the feeling that they got at the end of the game yesterday. And the way that happens is by learning quickly. I'm really excited for what you've got, particularly regarding Malachi Champion.
Yeah, good little player.
Yeah, birthday it was yesterday, by the way.
And little lessons in footy, great things to see. And I'll preface these clips by just sort of where the game was at a little bit. And West Coast had led early in the third quarter, and then I think they just had a few moments where they weren't team focused. And there was one where Jake Waterman, who had a great game, grabbed the ball in the forward pocket. Instead of putting it at the top of the square, he went with a banana, tried to kick an impossible goal, put it out in the full.
I saw Harley do the same thing as well.
Yeah.
Out in the full, yeah.
And then the Giants transitioned it down the other end. They got a stoppage in their forward 50. Toby Greenwood had a dirty day. Yeah. Ball, he spat out the front of the stoppage. The ball came out to him, and he could have had a shot, but he handballed it off to Thomas, I think it was, number 1. And
Hardy Thomas, yep.
Yeah, and he snapped the goal and put him back in front. So a guy who's having a real awful day, Toby Green, still does the team thing. And then there was a few little things that happened. This is the lessons in footy. This is what I love. So centre bounce after that goal to Thomas.
Yep.
And you'll see here, as the ball hits the ground, it's Yo versus Caniglio. All right. Now, Caniglio gets his hand to it, gives it to Callaghan, and he's out. So he's running with it. So Caniglio starts running forward. But Kelly comes in and smothers the footy, and then it goes to Malachi Champion with 2 receivers running past him, and Caniglio's 20 metres away.
Yeah.
And he's going to get burnt here because of that smother. But Champion picks it up, doesn't give it, and gets caught.
And he had that first give, didn't he?
He had the first give, didn't give it. So Yo's had to throw the ball back, and Kelly's gone past the man on the mark, and then Himmelberg takes the ball, and who's free in the middle of the ground? Caniglio.
Of course.
Turns around and goes bang and hits Stringer on the chest.
Yep.
And he slots it. He kicks the goal. And so a little lesson learnt there. And I think Kelly might have given him some feedback, Malachi Champion, on that piece of play. Then in the last quarter, 11:50 to go, centre bounce. And you see at the bounce, there's bodies flying everywhere. It's Dersma versus Caniglio.
Yes, I remember this one.
And it's bobbling around everywhere. There's tackles, there's pressure, there's all kinds of hits and fumbles and mishandballs. And then Bailey Williams gets it one hand pinned, and you'll see Dersma and Caniglio standing side by side.
Yep.
And he quick kicks it forward. And there's Champion, comes through, first give, there's Dersma, and he hits Waterman on the lead. And that's the goal that puts him back in front, and the crowd's roaring, and just little lessons learned. So the first time he got the feedback from Kelly, oh, mate, you got to give that. Don't get caught. Second time, instinctive, gives it. Dersma reads it, so he can anticipate quicker than what Caniglio can. On the left, good kick. Waterman gets it, and away they go. So love that bit of play from Champion. Little things like that. They're only small things, but they mean a lot.
Oh, I love that as well, Stoney. This is what I always am glued to your analysis. I know we've got some great feedback on the socials as well at just the things that you see in a game, which a lot of other people wouldn't, and it's brilliantly articulated.
Thank you. Little things like first gives create predictability, and with predictability comes anticipation. So Dersma's able to anticipate that quicker than what Caniglio is, because he says he'll give that, and so I'm going. Yep. And he does. And then he gets the reward for it as a team. No, it is. Do you, you suspect that Tim Kelly was the one to say something to Champion as a coach at three-quarter time. So I believe that second clip happened in the first one was the third quarter. That's right. And the second one was the last quarter. At three-quarter time, does McQualter go and say something like that to Malachi Champion? If Kelly's already done it, he doesn't need to. Player feedback is usually more powerful than coach feedback. Sometimes you have to as a coach, but if the players are doing it themselves, that's way more powerful. I would just leave it.
It's well pointed out. I'll whack that one up on the socials, which, we've had some really, really cool videos come up. And, thank you to everybody for their feedback, by the way, on the Darcy Wilmot story. And they are the stories I love. We spoke about this on the podcast last week, and your words on him were brilliant. A young guy that lost his dad and, found a home at Brisbane. They looked after him, and a brilliant family as well. And I think people got lost in a little bit in that, suggesting that we didn't think the family was brilliant. Not at all. When something that traumatic happens, you need a whole village, and the Lions are just a small part of that. But that was a great story to share, and I love some of the things that people came at us with about his father.
Well, he is a wonderful kid, which is what I mentioned. But one of the things I'm going to do on Darcy over the next 7 days, we'll meet again in a week, is I'm going to have a look at how many games he's played in a row, because I don't think he's missed many.
He hasn't missed a single game since debut.
So he's going to play 200, 250. Yeah. Hopefully for Brisbane, the whole lot. Yeah. But he's going to go down in the annals as one of the greats. And I heard Chris Fagan say the other day, don't be surprised if you see him in the midfield. So we'll look forward to that.
Yes, we will. We will. And I'll pick your brain about him as well, as it was a nice little story you shared. That was a round 10, Stoney, done and dusted. And I thoroughly love that one. We are almost halfway through the season. Not going through a full preview of next week, but I'm calling the Dockers on Friday night now. They are going for a club record 10 in a row. Who do you reckon comes to town to try and prevent that?
Oh, Rossi Lyon.
Ross the boss. Yeah, and Dockers fans will not forget what happened last year.
They've had some good contests, haven't they?
Yep, and St Kilda dismantled them last year. Yep. So a little bit of a danger game. I'm looking forward to that one under the bright Friday night lights. A couple of double headers, but the ladder's taking shape. Another good round of footy.
Look forward to next week.
Thank you very much, Stoney. Always love your insights. Mark Foreman is my name. Mark Stone is his name. We'll be back next week to go through round 11. Can you believe that? It is absolutely flying. Thank you for your continued support. You can subscribe on the podcast and on the socials as well. Mark Between the Arcs. We've got that Instagram page up and running, and your support has been invaluable. Thank you very much. Until next week, enjoy your footy.